Thanks, everyone. Let's make a start. So welcome to the 2022 Lean in Higher Education Conference. Thank you for attending today's session. The first session, really exciting, and the session is Lean for Leaders, Empowering Teams to Make a Difference. This will be run as a 60-minute workshop. So my name is May Goldberg, and I'm one of the co-hosts, moderators of this session. To start with, you would have seen a welcome to country in the previous, in the introduction. I'd like to do an acknowledgement. I'd like to acknowledge the country in which we work and learn. So before we start, as hosts, the University of Melbourne acknowledges the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander traditional owners of the unceded land on which we work and learn. We pay respect to the elders, past and present, and the place of Indigenous knowledge in the Academy. I'm on the land of the Wurundjeri people of the Kulin Nation. Some quick housekeeping issues. Please stay on mute if you can. And you're more than welcome to turn your camera on, which a lot of people have done, so that's great. So everyone can see you and the presenters can see you. If you have any questions, please feel free to put them in the chat or raise your hand. There will be a Q&A session at the end. And please note that you will have seen the presentation is being recorded. Now that's it for me. Please allow me to introduce the presenters of this session. It's our honor today to welcome Linda Spinks as presenter, and Elena Carpenter, Michelle Fordham, and Rebecca Shipley as co-presenters. Now over to our presenters for what I'm sure is going to be a wonderful session. Thank you.
Thank you, May, and good morning, everyone from Cambridge, and good evening, good afternoon, wherever you are. So we've got some slides to share with you, so I'll get straight on with the screen share so that we can crack on with that. So welcome to our session, Lean for Leaders, Empowering Teams to Make a Difference. Very quick agenda. We're going to talk a little bit about who we are, a little bit about our journey to where we are now, why Lean for Leaders is needed, and what have we done. And then we're going to hand it over to you really for a little bit of a discussion. It was interesting, some of Simon's keynote answered some of our questions. So we thought, oh, shall we just go ahead and cancel the session and just take Simon's keynote? But no, we won't do that. Just quick slide up there, meet the team. I don't want to use precious time to go through introductions. You'll meet all of us at some point during this session, but there's our contact details. You'll have perhaps read our profile on the site, so I'll leave you to sort of look into our background. But what about Cambridge? So we've included some nice photographs of around and about Cambridge, including the likes of King's College Chapel, St John's Bridge, and the University Library. An interesting one, the bottom left picture is the new Magdalen College Library, which it's recently been announced as the winner of the Reba Sterling Prize for 2022 as UK's best new building. So we're very proud of that as an institution. A little bit more about the university in general. It's a complex organisation. That's probably an understatement. It was established as a university in 1209. We have just over 20,000 students. That's roughly a split between 53 to 47% undergraduate, postgraduate, and just under 12,500 staff. With approximately 20% of those staff having leadership responsibilities of some form or another. The complexity is compounded by the fact that we have 6 academic schools and then 140 departments. Departments are linked to schools, but aren't necessarily answerable to schools, which adds to that complexity. There's also 31 independent colleges in Cambridge, together with a bunch of non-school institutions such as university museums, the Alumni and Development Office, etc., etc. So that's a little bit about us as a university. Old and complex, I guess, is a way to sum it up. The first thing we want to do, though, is a quick poll. May, if you would launch the poll. We just want to ask you very quickly, do you think leaders need to know about Lean to successfully embed continuous improvement? So the answers are coming in. Oh, the yeses certainly have it at the minute. Yeah. Majority saying yes. Well, 2/3, I would say, saying yes. 23% are saying no, and 13% are unsure. Let's close the poll now. Thanks, May. So that's interesting. We'll come back to that. We'll cycle back to that later at the end of the session, just to see if some of the things that we've said and some of the things that we've discussed have changed your thinking on that. So what about the journey? How have we got to where we are now to start thinking about Lean for Leaders? In 2017, I guess I started the Lean training journey at Cambridge. And that was really kicked off following a discussion at the Lean HE conference at the University of Stirling in 2016, where I had a conversation with Michael Gash from the University of Nottingham, really talking about how the fact that although training was available externally, it wasn't really fit for university staff. It was to, we needed to adapt it. And I was a single resource at the time, and therefore it was quite hard for me to actually provide support and what have you to as many people as was needed. So following that conversation with Mick, he said, oh, we have a training course for staff. Why don't you come along? Which I duly did a few months later, and then launched our training in the summer of 2017. We then got people asking, once they'd done sort of an introduction to Lean level training, we got people asking, but what about the next level? What about the next level? So we then went into partnership with the University of Winchester, who started to deliver practitioner level training for us. I then was pulled out of the IT department, where I'd been sort of wallowing to a certain extent, where I'd been trying to do continuous improvement and Lean covertly, into a program called Our Cambridge, which ran for 4 years and was really looking at supporting our staff, simplifying our processes and looking at our ways of working. And at that point, continuous improvement started to get more of a spotlight, and the training really took off. We were fully booked. I recruited the team. Elena and Michelle joined me in January 2020, and then COVID hit. So training all got cancelled, and we started to have a little rethink, and we decided to go for accreditation ourselves. That way we could deliver that practitioner training ourselves. So in September 2020, we achieved that accreditation and started to deliver accredited Lean training at both introduction and practitioner level. And then we started to collect feedback. So since that time, since 2017, 846 people have attended at least introduction to Lean. 121 have attended practitioner, and 1,452 people have attended some sort of training course in total. However, when we surveyed past attendees, the response rate we found was very, very low. Only around 10% of people responded to those surveys. So those that did respond gave us a very positive result. They were using Lean, all bar 1 or 2 were using Lean and continuous improvement as part of their day-to-day working on projects. It was part of their life. That left a question that, what about the others? What are they doing? So we started to dig into it in a little bit more detail and started to get sort of feedback from people, basically saying that because it was a very much bottom-up approach, they were commenting on the fact that, yeah, they could do so much, but they were hitting a ceiling. they were getting, so far, they were making change locally, they were making change to their way of working. And then for one reason or another, they weren't necessarily getting the support of their managers. We've also seen this a little bit with our practitioner trainees who had to do a project, and those projects were often seen as something extra, something to one side, not part of their day job. So it started to get us thinking as to say, is there a missing link? Do we need to start coming to it from the top down to a certain extent? Earlier on this year, we had a change in organisation. The Our Cambridge programme ended, reached its natural end, and we're now part of a change in programme management office. And as part of that, we started to look at what is our vision, what are we here to do, what do we need to achieve? So you'll see on the screen now, the vision for our continuous improvement team within that CPMO is that we want to embed continuous improvement across the university, empowering people to make meaningful change. And some of the tactics around that are specifically around Lean for Leaders are, we need to ensure we've got increased senior management buy-in. We need to harness those lean practitioners that are coming through our training in those 140 plus departments, in those schools, in those non-school institutions. And we want to make sure that we've got a network of continuous improvement champions across professional services. So there's a lot to do. And we think that Lean for Leaders is part of that. So the first question we had there before I hand over to Michelle to talk about what we've actually done is to start to think about who are our leaders and what are they saying. And, anecdotally, we've got various camps. We've got those that say, I can't see Lean working here. We're Cambridge, we're old, we're 800 years old. We don't need it. It's extra training, it's time. I don't have time to come along and do training and learn about this. Some are saying, sign me up. We do have some leaders that have come on. We've got some quite senior support. Our senior Pro-Vice Chancellor, Andy Neely, has a background in manufacturing and engineering. So he's very much an advocate, but not necessarily all of them. Some leaders say, no, I've heard about it. Equally, others, one of our departments, our research operations team, Lean training is part of their induction process. So it's very, very mixed results. And so we know that there's a mixture out there. So on that note, I'm going to hand over to Michelle so that she can talk about what we've done.
Thank you. Hi, everybody. So what did we do? We identified a sort of a gap and a need. So we did what we do best. We created a course. So we created a Lean for Leaders course. We gave it a bit of bite by including a video, as Linda mentioned, from one of our Pro-Vice Chancellors who champions lean thinking and lean working. That element of it actually went down very well. So I'd recommend sort of that senior management level endorsement. So we ran it as a pilot with a bit of a hand-picked selection of managers really and leaders, people we knew, people that we trusted to be honest and give us some really good feedback. And we included a range of content. A few of the bits are here. We thought it quite relevant and it felt like a sort of rounded, well-structured course. It was around 90 minutes long. We had a bit of introduction to Lean. So what is Lean? What are we covering? We talked about balancing voices as a leader. So, the voice of the customer versus the business, the process, the system. We talked about characteristics of lean leaders. And in particular, we talked about a distinction between, good leaders and good lean leaders, which I'll talk about a little bit more in a second. We had an activity, so what helps and what hinders our leaders embed that continuous improvement. And we touched on Kotter's 8-step model, which is one of our favourites to support lean implementation, and some elements of psychological safety and the 5 C's and how to engage your team and bring them along with you. So once we've done the course, we asked for feedback. Actually, and in preparation for this seminar as well, we did it again a few months ago, and which tweaked some bits, but the feedback was sort of similar. And the general feeling was that it just didn't quite land. and we weren't sure why. And it's worth mentioning here, and I'm sure that there are people in the audience that are very much in the same boat, that we are not teachers by trade. So we are practitioners. We train and we share the things we are knowledgeable about. But in any sort of intent to teach, there's obviously a pedagogical aspect there too. So we're practitioners being teachers, so that brings sort of different challenges, especially as we develop new content and learning outcomes. So it becomes quite tricky. If we think about generally, if we attend a successful and effective training and think about what that should result in, we feel like we understand what that success is. So a successful training course has something new to teach us, otherwise why would we be on it? Engages our learners, gives them new ideas, encourages that creative thinking, offers a sort of a course of action for them to take post-course, and has that memorable message and creating new ways of working for those people. So that's what we wanted. Feedback of our lovely course, it seemed really nice. Feedback of it and our own review of it showed that while we were successful in some of these things, so we did engage learners, they were very happy to come along and help us. They did take some ideas away. Some of them didn't quite hit the mark. So we didn't quite think that people were taking away that memorable message, or maybe learning something beyond what they knew already. So we had to think, were we offering something new? Were we creating an effective course of action? And again, were people taking and sharing that memorable message, as I mentioned? Sort of not. So we needed to understand why. So what were we actually missing? Because it felt good at the time. There was a bit of lean, bit of leadership. It all hung together quite nicely, but it just didn't feel like it was as effective as we wanted it to be. So we knew we had to, PDCA cycle, we know, stop, we assess, and we have a look at what might be tripping us up. So after some proper review, we started thinking about sort of three main areas, which are not uncommon at all, but they're also easily taken for granted, especially as we've been doing this for 4 years, and when you think you know what you're doing, and then suddenly it doesn't work once, and you think, oh, what's that? So the first area that we thought it might be this was around our audience. We've lost we can see a little bit if we get back into presentation mode. Our audience. So actually thinking, who are we aiming this course at? There are leaders, yes, but as Linda's alluded to, there are very different types of leaders. There are those that are fully engaged with Lean. There are those who don't know it at all. And there are those who, they might know it, but they don't believe in it. We have to consider those who don't feel the need for change, or those that might be fearful that it will create more work, or create mixed messages for their team about what their priorities are. And consider, are we targeting the keen ones or the reluctant ones? Who do we want to bring along with us? Similarly, how do we target and train those leaders with different motivations behind them? We've got those who know about Lean and want their team to engage, that sort of person bringing the group, versus those whose team members have had training but want support from their leaders, which we sort of got from our feedback. The second area we needed to consider was the whole idea of leadership and Lean leadership. So as I mentioned, the course distinguished between a good leader and a good Lean leader. So the aim of this was to actually just to show what Lean offers in terms of leadership development and actually enriching a role and advancing those ways of working. But it proved to be quite a controversial addition to the deck, because the question was raised, is there really a distinction between a good leader and a good Lean leader? Is good leadership just good leadership? people are attending the course. Does that show promise in itself? Are we potentially offending those who don't know about lean and suggesting that a lean leader is something better? So it's interesting, those poll results at the start, the idea that actually 65% of you think that yes, a leader should know about lean. The next section, the next area really were our objectives. So was the content right? Were we clear in what people wanted and in our delivery of it? So there, in the feedback, there was actually one person who just thought it was a really quick 90-minute run through for intro for lean for really busy people. I'm like, yeah, thanks for that. And it wasn't quite what they expected. So the need for the training, going back to why we were doing it in the first place, was born from feedback from people who had come to other training and had claimed that as many ideas as they had, they felt a barrier in being able to implement them. And that barrier has potentially come from their leadership. So it might be a barrier of time, it might be skills, it might be an outright rejection of the whole concept. But this is our aim of the training, was how do we help equip those leaders to break those barriers? But then we start going into the idea of people and barriers, and there's a complexity to that. So were we oversimplifying what was needed to actually change things? So it's a complex concept. Do we need to offer that complexity? And that leads us on to this next slide, because if we consider what it really takes to be a successful lean leader, and using our trusty six questions here, it starts to feel much bigger than we initially thought. And probably more than a 90-minute session could ever actually hope to address. So we start to look at the who, the why. So again, this is like in the keynote speech as well. The why. Why should people care? Why lean at all? Why should leaders be championing it? Sorry, and why can't we afford not to? We have to consider the how. So how might people implement it? The who's needed and what's needed to be known about those people to be successful. The what can you actually use? And the where and the when. So in what context are we using our Lean for Leader training? Yeah, as I say, it was bigger than we thought. We sort of compared this needs analysis, I suppose, with the training we put together. And it turns out that, as denoted by the stars on this slide, that we focused quite naturally on the how and the what. So we tend to champion the how do I become a lean leader? What does a lean leader look like? What training do I need? But if people don't understand the rest of it, so the why, probably the most important one, the who, the where and the when, the how and the what don't actually have much to cling to. So messages sort of become a bit forgotten, techniques have no context, and importantly, the urgency is lost and the need is lost. If anybody has any comments, by the way, on our brain dump of what it takes, please do enter them in the chat or feedback, because that'd be really interesting. Generally, and as we mentioned in the context of our university, we face real challenges in delivering effective training, as I'm sure everybody does. So even after 4 years, sort of getting to know our colleagues and trying to deliver what is asked of us, we consider the complexity of the university as well. We have 140 departments, and sometimes it can feel like we work for 140 different organisations. So it can be very challenging. But that's where we are. And really, that's where we are now. So sort of what can we do about it? Unfortunately, this presentation doesn't end in a magic, we did this instead moment. We figured it all out and we did some amazing training. Feedback was spectacular, and we're full of lean leaders and they're everywhere. Because it didn't happen and we're still trying to figure it out. We are post our second pilot and we want to be ready to go again, because we know there's a need for our leaders to be supporting continuous improvement. So how do we best help those leaders? with that in mind, then, we'd love to ask for your ideas. Use our network in the way that everyone should. So we'd love to find out your ideas. So your experiences, your thoughts, your insights about how to make this happen. What have you seen work in the past? What should we avoid? Are there any areas that we should be more aware of? How do we make our leaders enablers for change and make allies of them and support them to empower their teams? We've referred to them as co-pilots here on our journey, which is sort of, well, it was a bit of a delirious Friday afternoon. Co-pilots, we're going to go soar away into the sunset and make a new day, but we got excited. So we're going to do breakouts, but you may have seen that there are quite a few of you. So it's going to be quite chunky because there are only 4 of us. So what we're going to do, we're going to split you into quite large groups, which is great for anybody who doesn't quite feel that they want to talk, because there'll be no pressure to talk or feedback. So you've got a nice, easy one to start with. But we'd love for you to stay and not duck out. And we're just going to facilitate that question, and we'll share that question with you.
All right, I'll set the rooms up. Everyone will be pulled into a room and then pulled back out when the time is up. Here you go. Oh. Hi, Nicole. Have you just joined?
Hi there, I have. Sorry, I'm late.
It's fine. Everyone's in a breakout room, so I can assign you
That's
to a
okay.
breakout room if you want to hear the conversation. There's quite a few people in them, so
Yeah.
it's about
Are
14.
they, how long have they got left in the breakout?
9 minutes.
Okay. Yeah, maybe I'll just wait till they finish and come back to the wider group. Is that okay?
Yep, up to, yeah, whatever you prefer. Yeah.
Thank you.
No worries.
Sorry for being late. I just had a meeting.
It's all good. I just wanted to check if you wanted to go in. Yeah.
Thanks.
Hi, Mohammed. Have you just joined or were you in a breakout session already? Perhaps not at your desk.
we all back?
Lovely. I think we're all back. Are we all back? Excellent. So I'm Elena. Thank you all so much for your input. I mean, we've got Miro boards full of Post-its. And I was attempting to do a sort of summary of all of that. But I think what's come out, and obviously from the chat and that as well, and from what I can see going around the boards, there's a few things that actually we can start to see a few themes emerging from that. There's a lot of information really about sort of thinking, you know, academia side. So, you know, what's their motivation? What's the recognition that they're going to get from doing all of that? Thinking about, you know, their the information that they need, and thinking about how to use the terminology that would be motivate that sort of community, especially in terms of the academic community. There's all sorts of other information here as well. I'm just sort of whizzing around the Miro boards to sort of look at that. So understanding sort of pains from people as well. What are their pain points? And looking at talking about the benefits that they're going to get from that. So performance rather than taking the jargon out as well, and going to the academic gemba, I thought was quite a nice one. Understanding what they need and what they want from that. Looking at potentially sort of showing leaders the benefits of what they'll get from understanding lean, and empowering their own staff. We've also got sort of thinking about the difference between being a leader, a lean leader, and a sponsor. So a sponsor of lean, not necessarily a lean leader, which actually might appeal to people more. Is there a toolkit for sponsors of how to sponsor lean? Rather than actually thinking about what it takes to be a lean leader, might appeal to people more in terms of thinking about what that difference is between those two things. Yeah, so lots and lots of feedback. It's going to take us a while to digest, but thank you so much for your input. I think it's brilliant that we've got all of this to take away. And as Michelle said, you know, we're being very honest about where we are in our journey and where we want to go with it next. So thank you so much.
So I think before we close and go to Q&A, can we do the poll again, May, and then Becks will do some closing statements.
So poll is up again, same question as before. We're intrigued to see if your opinion has changed or not. So we'll let the poll run for a while until we can get the answers. So just a reminder of before, we had 64% of people felt that leaders should. No was with 22, unsure were about 13. So it looks about 79% of people have participated. Yeah, sorry, Gumball is our 5th co-presenter today. Everyone in my breakout room has already met her. She enjoyed the Miro board. So I think we're pretty much done. So it doesn't look like we have moved that much. Is there anybody out there who's willing to put up a hand? And has your opinion changed? Did you say yes before and now you're not sure? Did you say no before and now you're a yes? Feel free to pop anything in the chat. If anything today has sparked your feelings about this at all. Or are you still feeling as unsure as you were before? We have a couple more percentage of unsure. Anybody brave enough? If not, that's fine. We're moving on now. That's the main part of our presentation finished. We're moving on to Q&A. So it could be you can raise a hand, pop something in the chat. I know that we have had some questions came through a bit earlier as well. Carrie Ann's changed to unsure. Excellent. What was that from? Were you a yes or a no before? Yes to unsure. Okay. Interesting. I like that everybody is maybe feeling as confused as we have been amongst this as well. So open up the field to any questions at all. Does anybody have anything they would like to ask any of us?
There's a few questions in the chat. So would you like me to start from the top? Because there's quite a few that have come through, and I'll my Zoom is acting up. I'm trying to spotlight all of you guys, but first I'll start with the questions and then I'll move on to doing that. So to start with, Tammy asked, do you have a community of practice of lean practitioners at Cambridge?
Shall I answer that one? It's an interesting question. It's a question that communities of practice is something that's been rolled out across the university. We've had a network of CI, continuous improvement at Cambridge, for probably since back in 2017. And at one point last year, we thought about creating a more formal community of practice, but we actually backed away from it a little bit. And are just running with that network approach. It might well be that we change that as we move forward, and if we achieve that aim of having a practitioner in every department. But for now, we feel that our team would be driving anything anyway, so a network does the job.
All right, thank you. Next question from Layla. What was challenging for leaders when adopting lean or understanding the role in CI?
Anyone else want to? I'm not sure we know the answer to that. I think it is time. It certainly came up in my breakout group that just having the time to think about this and being seen as separate from the day job. Anyone else want to respond on that one?
No, I think that was part of the problem that we were facing is trying to unpick that, like Michelle was saying, a lot of the why, sorry, about what the role is and how involved they're going to be or how they need to be.
Okay, great. Jose has asked, how many leaders did attend the first training?
Elena?
I think we had about, it was quite a small group, so it was only 7 or 8 on the first pilot, and then I think we did it 3 times perhaps overall, because we had 2 in the first round and then one that Michelle said that we did just more recently. So overall, I think it was probably about 20 at the most.
We were very mindful of inviting senior people to a pilot. You've got to be very careful that you're not wasting their time and you don't want to lose them along the way. So we handpicked to a certain extent, and we handpicked some people that we knew weren't necessarily on board with what we were doing. So we tried to have a mix.
Great, thank you. And another question from Layla, what would you do differently?
Michelle, do you want to pick that one? Because that goes back basically to what you were saying.
Well, I think first thing we're going to do, and there's a question how we're going to proceed. We're going to take all of your post-its, all of your ideas, and translate them. I think, what would we do differently? I think consider those 3 areas and make sure that we are absolutely clear in what people want from us, what people are prepared to not endure, but sort of undertake as training. Because there's a lot in our group that we sort of talk about patience, and it takes time. The challenge is that people don't have it is precious, and if we give magic up time, we'd probably just end up using it for email anyway. So it's about making it worthwhile. So I think do it differently. It would be probably much more evidence-based than we have gone so far, and less theoretical, perhaps around concepts of leadership. I know it's because then you go into sort of professional development, and actually that's sort of why this is successful and why it's worth getting on board with. I think that's possibly the first, the just slightly different approach.
Yeah, and that's sort of linked to a question that John's just asked about whether we collaborate with the central staff development team. And yes, we do. We work quite closely with them, particularly the leads on that team around the sort of leadership program. So we make sure anything that we do, she was involved in our pilots, so that we're making sure that if nothing else, it's a consistent message and that we can sort of tag on to what each other's doing.
Great. Next question from Peter. Did you target those who were sponsors for the projects of the CI practitioners?
Not specifically. I guess almost by the fact that they were people that were known to us because perhaps we had practitioners in there, but it wasn't a conscious decision, I guess.
I think that's one of the things that we need to, that's a really good question actually. Sponsorship came up a lot in my group, thinking about who's sponsoring the stuff that not necessarily practitioners, but just who's sponsoring improvement projects, and do we know who they are? But yeah, for practitioner projects, maybe that's a good thing to take away. Think about who those people are.
Yeah.
Jose asked, did you use academic literature to link to academic knowledge as a way to connect, especially on the lean leadership behavior?
No.
We also discussed in the breakout a bit about that one.
Yes, we've got a link in the chat, I think, to a good academic paper that will will help. So thank you for that, Jose.
Peter asked, are leaders focused on running the business and improving the business?
Some are, some aren't, shall we say, being very sensitive to the way Cambridge is organised. Again, it touches back to the point that Michelle made about 140 departments. Sometimes it feels that you're working with 140 separate institutions, and the ways in each one can be completely different.
Great. A question from Tammy, a key question for leaders. How can we link lean and sustainability within our higher education institutions?
Really good question. That's something I've made a note of to take away, because that's something we can perhaps link into future sessions. So thanks, Tammy. I'll be in touch.
And there's a lot of great comments on the chat, which I won't go through, but a lot of great feedback. A question from Ellen, how are you going to proceed?
Well, I think we've got some useful insights from the session today. So thank you, everyone. As Elena said, we'll take it away. I think we need to regroup again, have a look. I've got, I think certainly from my group, I've got some contacts to look at, and there's a comment in there about benchmarking. Look at what other institutions across the network are doing in this space. And go again. And I think there's some interesting stuff within this our newly formed Change and Programme Management Office. There's similar questions going on, not just about continuous improvement, but across transformation programs. There's a lot of transformation programs going on across the institution, and there's no consistency in sponsorship roles and leadership of those programs. So I think there's a broader piece of work that we can get involved in looking at that, because it's certainly a gap in Cambridge.
I think you answered John's question earlier, Linda.
Yeah.
So if we could, you're comfortable with that. Dan asked, how do you measure success of the program?
Elena, do you want to?
So I think measuring is something that we struggle with at the university, not necessarily because we don't necessarily have the right data. We just don't know what to collect in terms to in thinking about, you know, our journey of improvement from understanding where we are now to where we would need to be. Lots of projects obviously have their own measurements in terms of improvement pieces that are going on around. So, and we encourage people to think about their own measurement. But in terms of measuring our own program, we sort of measure things about the learning and what people have taken away and whether or not they're applying it. We send them evaluations sort of 3 months on about whether or not that are they able to apply it. And actually that's where we got some of the feedback from, in terms of, well, I've got it and I'm trying to use it, but I'm being blocked. You know, I don't have the time, I'm not being given the time. So yeah, that's where some of that feedback came from. So we are measuring the success of the training in that way. Yeah, but no, we haven't thought about how we're going to measure the leaders bit at the moment.
Great. There's one final question from Bill. Can you benchmark and ask who has a successful leadership program to borrow or adapt?
I think we will absolutely go away and do that. So thanks, Bill.
All right, there's one more question. I don't know if you want to just cover this one from Krista. Was there an aspect of the training that all the leader attendees really appreciated?
Oh, that's an interesting one. I can't remember off the top of my head, Michelle.
The message from our Pro-Vice Chancellor went down well. I think people appreciated a senior voice. You know, that sort of pincer attack that we've been trying. It demonstrated that actually, you know, they are people. They have a past. His past is manufacturing, which sort of immediately makes him stand out as within a group of academics. So I think that was positive and well received, bar some tweaks and complaints about the background.
One of the things that I said to my group that we'd be happy to do, as well as sharing the slide deck from this morning, we'd be happy to share the latest version of the training that we're offering, if people would be interested to either comment or utilise bits or feedback to us. I'd be more than happy to do that.
Great. Those are the end of our questions. Any more comments or anything else you'd like to add before we wrap up?
No, I'd just like to say thanks to everyone for really engaging with the session and getting involved with the discussion. Sorry we couldn't give you answers, but we're looking forward to sort of working on this more and sharing, hopefully, future success.
Thank you so much to our speakers, to our presenters, to Linda, to Elena, Michelle, and Rebecca. Thanks also to everyone who attended today. And that's it. We hope to see you at the other conference sessions. Have a great day, great night. Great rest of the conference. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Bye.
Bye.
Thanks so much. Yeah.